"Oh, yes, there's naturally a higher charge for 2 figures than for 1. "We should like to make it pay," the husband confessed. "That's very good of you," I returned, appreciating so unwonted a sympathy, for I supposed he meant pay the artist. A sense of strangeness seemed to dawn on the lady. "We meant for the illustrations. Mr. Rivet said you might put one in." "Put one in? An illustration?" I was equally confused. "Sketch her off, you know," said the gentleman, colouring. It was only then that I understood the service Claude Rivet had rendered me. He had told them that I worked in black and white, for magazines, for story books, for sketches of contemporary life, and consequently had frequent employment for models. These things were true, but it was not less true, I may confess it now, whether because the aspiration was to lead to everything or to nothing I leave the reader to guess, that I couldn't get the honours, to say nothing of the emoluments, of a great painter of portraits out of my head. My illustrations were my pot-boilers. I looked to a different branch of art, far and away the most interesting it had always seemed to me, to perpetuate my fame. There was no shame in looking to it also to make my fortune, but that fortune was by so much further from being made from the moment my visitors wished to be "done" for nothing. I was disappointed, for in the pictorial sense I had immediately seen them. I had seized their type, I had already settled what I would do with it. Something that wouldn't absolutely have pleased them, I afterwards reflected. "Ah, you're a," I began, as soon as I had mastered my surprise. I couldn't bring out the dingy word models. It seemed to fit the case so little. "We haven't had much practice," said the lady. "We've got to do something, and we thought that an artist in your line might perhaps make something of us," her husband threw off. He further mentioned that they didn't know many artists, and that they had gone first on the off chance. He painted views, of course, but sometimes put in figures, perhaps I remembered, to Mr. Rivet, whom they had met a few years before at a place in Norfolk where he was sketching. "We used to sketch a little ourselves," the lady hinted. "It's very awkward, but we absolutely must do something," her husband went on. "Of course we're not so very young," she admitted with a wan smile. With the remark that I might as well know something more about them, the husband had handed me a card extracted from a neat new pocket-book. Their appurtenances were all of the freshest, and inscribed with the words "Major Monarch." Impressive as these words were, they didn't carry my knowledge much further, but my visitor presently added, "I've left the army, and we've had the misfortune to lose our money. In fact, our means are dreadfully small." "It's an awful bore," said Mrs. Monarch. They evidently wished to be discreet, to take care not to swagger because they were gentlefolks. I perceived that they would have been willing to recognize this as something of a drawback, at the same time that I guessed at an underlying sense, their consolation in adversity, that they had their points. They certainly had, but these advantages struck me as preponderantly social, such for instance as would help to make a drawing-room look well. However, a drawing-room was always, or ought to be, a picture. In consequence of his wife's allusion to their age, Major Monarch observed, "Naturally it's more for the figure that we thought of going in. We can still hold ourselves up." On the instant I saw that the figure was indeed their strong point. His "naturally" didn't sound vain, but it lighted up the question. "She has got the best," he continued, nodding at his wife, with a pleasant after-dinner absence of circumlocution. I could only reply, as if we were in fact sitting over our wine, that this didn't prevent his own from being very good, which led him in turn to rejoin, "We thought that if you ever have to do people like us, we might be something like it. She particularly, for a lady in a book, you know." I was so amused by them that, to get more of it, I did my best to take their point of view, and though it was an embarrassment to find myself appraising physically, as if they were animals on hire or useful blacks, a pair whom I should have expected to meet only in one of the relations in which criticism is tacit, I looked at Mrs.